Yep. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Winnetka Village Council regular virtual meeting for August 4th, 2020. I'd like to call the meeting to order and remind everybody to turn off or mute your cell phones or other electronic devices. Tonight, I will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Oh, where's the flag? There it is. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States
of America
and to the republic for which it stands,
one
nation, indivisible,
under God,
indivisible, liberty,
with liberty
and justice
for all.
Thank you. You'd think I'd get the Pledge of Allegiance right. I've said it enough. I apologize. The feedback was fooling me. All right, quorum. Rob, you want to go ahead and check quorum?
Certainly. Good evening. Checking quorum for next Tuesday, August 11th, study session. We anticipate this to be virtual.
Wait, Rob, that is virtual this week?
Yes.
Yeah, Bob, I'm sorry. I was gonna actually provide a couple of announcements. It's really, it's important to me that it's important to me that that we're all together for this discussion, and I just don't feel comfortable trying to do any component of virtual, and I really don't want to miss your voice in that conversation. There's another item that we'd like to talk about next week relative to potential ideas for providing assistance to our business community. So since it's a very intensive and timely issue, I figured I'd bump that up to the study session. We bat it around. So if you're available to attend that virtually, it would be awesome.
Oh, for sure. Definitely.
So, but I just didn't feel right about having that streetscape conversation. And secondarily, I mentioned to several people, am I still on?
We can hear you.
Okay.
We're not hearing you, Chris. We lost you, Chris.
I thought maybe better to just defer it for a couple weeks, and we'll see if there's a time for all of us to come on. So anyway, Rob, go ahead.
Sure.
Forum. My screen's a mess tonight, by the way, guys, so I apologize.
Okay. The last meeting in August is the 18th. Does anybody have any plans not to make it?
No, I'll be there.
Okay.
Is that virtual or what is that?
Anticipated virtual, yeah.
Okay.
And then September 1st, the first meeting of that month. All good? Okay, thank you.
September. All right, public comment. This is the time of the evening where folks from the community can share their thoughts with us on anything that is not an agenda item. Kristen, I know you've got a couple of emails that you'd like to read. And then we'll go on and see if there's anybody out there who would like to speak to us directly.
Yes, thank you, Chris. There is one comment that we received from general public comment, and it's from Liz Kunkel. She says, "Dear trustees, thank you for all your hard work in general and specifically over the past few months. I'm writing with comments regarding 2 issues on tonight's agenda. And I'll read the comment related to the consent agenda item because generally there's no specific public comment on consent agenda items. For point number 1 is please approve the Class A1 liquor license for Guanajuato. We will be lucky to have this wonderful restaurant in Winnetka So let's make it easy for them to come. And her second comment is related to the outdoor tent item, which will be read when we are at that agenda item.
Gotcha. Please let me take a look and make sure that my family isn't screaming something downstairs, because everybody keeps disappearing and the sound goes in. So one moment, please.
It might be the kids at the cast system. Okay, come on. Come on, village meeting. Chris, we see you, but we don't hear you.
Can anybody hear me?
Now that's good.
Jack, you're first for the reports.
No reports.
Bob,
No report, Chris.
Andy,
No report.
John,
The only report I have is I want to make an observation regarding the, the streetscape a little bit of what we did on Chestnut, and how it has really become a biking area. I went over to Fred's Garage one night. I'm not sure if it was Friday or Saturday night. There had to be 20 bicycles parked outside.
wow.
For people inside of Fred's Garage. So just wanted to point it out and keep that in mind as we go forward.
Awesome. Thank you. Penny. Any report, Penny?
I have no reports. I'm also having a really hard time hearing people tonight. I don't know, like I completely missed what John just said. I don't know if it's me, my connection where I am. I may need to check out because
We can hear the dogs.
those not my dogs. Anyway, so we'll see how it proceeds.
Great. Rob.
No report this evening.
Oh, sorry.
No, Rob Andersoff, I'm sorry.
My
Yeah,
apologies.
Nothing tonight.
Village manager
No report. My apologies.
and village president. I gave pretty much my report about next week's meeting, so that's why. Approval of the agenda. Item 6. Does any trustee wish to remove an item on the consent agenda for a separate vote? Please raise your hand if you do. Seeing none, may I have a motion to approve the final form of the agenda?
So moved.
So,
Second.
second.
Roll call vote?
Trustee Kripe,
Yes.
Trustee Dearborn,
Yes.
Trustee Swerk,
Yes.
Trustee Coladarchi,
Yes.
Trustee Lampier,
Yes.
Trustee Apatow.
Yes.
The motion carries. Consent agenda. I will ask the village clerk to read what's on the consent agenda. Penny, you're going to have to mute.
I think that might be Jack.
Oh, that's my
They're
neighbor's
not my
dog does,
dogs.
my neighbor's dog doesn't know it's not on the agenda.
Yeah.
Hang on, I'll close the window.
Or just mute while you're not talking.
Throw something at him.
Yeah,
Now I hear crickets. I'm.
Want me? Okay, there we
Thank
go.
goodness we're not getting paid for this. It would be pretty sad to ask for compensation for this. God. All
Okay,
right.
we're ready.
We're back to the village clerk reading the consent agenda.
Okay, approval of the warrant list dated July 17th through the 30th, 2020, in the amount of $1,262,196.08. Resolution number R49, 2020, approving a Class A1 liquor license for Sausalito Incorporated, doing business as Guanajuato Restaurant, for adoption.
Thanks, Rob. May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda by omnibus vote?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote?
Trustee Crichton,
Not my dog.
Yes, I think the dog voted for me, but yes.
okay. Trustee Swerk,
Yes.
Trustee Dearborn,
Yes.
Trustee Apatoff,
Yes.
Trustee Lampier,
Yes.
Trustee Caladarchi,
Yes.
and carries. Thank you.
Great. One moment, please. I'll tell you what, since we have Mimi and Eric here for Delos therapy, anybody have a problem with moving that one? And we'll just deal with it right now. Is that okay?
Let's do it.
Yep.
Okay. So we'll move to ordinance number M12 2020, Delos Therapy, special use 547 Lincoln. This is up for introduction and adoption. The requested special use permit was discussed in July, a majority of council being in favor. David's going to give a quick review and we'll go from there. Sorry, David.
Very quick review. As you said, you reviewed it at your last meeting. We have prepared an ordinance approving the special use for the medical office. And I'd be happy to answer any questions. No questions?
No questions.
Okay.
Did you finish, David? I'm sorry.
Yes, I was finished. The ordinance is ready for your consideration.
Okay, thank you. Comcast is really doing a horrible job tonight, so I'm sorry. Do we have any public comment from the audience on this item?
You're on mute, Kristen.
No, you?
Wouldn't be a meeting if someone didn't start talking with mute on, right? So no one else needs to do that. I took care of it for tonight. We have Mimi, Eric, and Lenny from Delos Therapy joining us.
Okay, they're the applicants. We don't have any public comment on that item?
We have no public comment.
Great. Does council have any additional questions or comments for David or the applicant at this point in time?
No.
No, we do not.
Nope.
Great. Okay, everybody okay with the waiving of the introduction?
Yes, I'll make a motion if we need that to waive introduction.
Yeah, I'll get to that in a minute, John.
Okay.
I can't see anybody now, so I really can't tell if. Honk your horn if you're in opposition.
My neighbor's dog is silent.
My street. All right. Well, seeing what happened to Penny now. This is a nightmare. All right. Do I have a motion to waive introduction of ordinance number M12 2020?
Yes, so moved.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Trustee Swerk,
Yes.
Trustee Caladarchi,
Yes.
Trustee Crichton,
Yes.
Trustee Lampier,
Yes.
Trustee Apatow,
Yes.
trustee Dearborn.
Yes.
Okay, that motion carries. Do I have a motion to adopt ordinance number M12, 2020?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Roll call vote?
Trustee Swerk,
Yes.
trustee Apatow,
Yes.
trustee Lampier, trustee Dearborn,
Yes.
trustee Caladarchi,
Yes.
trustee Kreip.
Yes.
Motion carries. Congratulations, Mimi and Eric. We'll see you later.
Thank
Great.
you so much.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Welcome.
Yes, I didn't hear my
Welcome.
name.
Great. All right, we'll get back on schedule here now. I just wanted to get that one out of the way as long as they were in the room. Item 8A, ordinance number MC3, 2020, ordinance amending sign regulations to allow display case signs. After this item was discussed in July, the council requested some revisions to the ordinance, which Community Development Director David Schoen will now review with us. David, take it away.
Thank you. So let me share my screen. So at the last meeting, we did discuss display case signs. Just to quickly refresh your memory, it is a form of a changeable copy sign. We do allow certain changeable copy signs now. This type of sign, just to make it clear, is a display case sign that would be placed on the exterior building walls to allow a business to post changeable messages. At the July 21st meeting, the council discussed a number of items. One, in terms of what businesses should be allowed to have such signs, to require an administrative review. You talked about maintenance and lighting concerns, and there was a little discussion about size of the sign. In terms of what businesses should be allowed to have display case signs, as you may recall, the Design Review Board recommended that any business be allowed to have a display case sign. Some trustees thought the original intent was just for food-related businesses, food and beverage-related businesses. And they had concerns about opening it up all businesses. Some other council members suggested, well, maybe we limit it to a little broader set of that. We had looked at just permitted uses in all of the commercial districts, and that didn't quite narrow it as neatly down as we thought it might. And so what we're proposing is it's basically retail businesses, food-related businesses, and food service businesses. In your staff or in the staff report to you, we list what those categories include in the zoning code, and I'd be happy to answer any questions regarding that. In terms of administrative review, we have added in that it does require a sign permit approval so that staff will review them to make sure they're compliant with the standards that we propose establishing. There is not a design review by the Design Review Board, but there are some design-related criteria in the standards we'll be adopting, and those are listed here. Some members had concerns about lighting and its impact on the surrounding area. Our sign regulations do currently have a lighting standard, and we added a specific lighting standard based on that one for display case signs, and it's included in the staff report. In terms of maintenance concerns, we do have a general maintenance standard in our sign regulations. There seem to be some concerns specifically about the changeable copy nature of these signs and how that portion of the sign can become worn, faded, torn over time, and that we included some specific maintenance language regarding that issue. The last issue, there was some discussion about the maximum size of the sign. Currently as drafted at 6 feet. There was no real conclusion to look at another limitation for the sign, or that we should look for a different limitation. So currently that is 6 feet in the ordinance. This is some information that had been shared with the design review board and was included in the staff report that you had received in the last packet, just giving you some ideas about typical paper sizes and how they're combined and what sort of sign area would result from combining those different sizes. So this is a summary of the proposed regulations. As we discussed, it would require a sign permit, would limit 1 per business. There would be specific businesses that would be allowed to have them. And the changeable copy message would need to advertise or provide information about products and services offered by the establishment. The sign area would not be included in an overall limitation we have for all exterior signs. So that gives them some flexibility in terms of having this sign. As I said, there's a limitation on sign area. There's a limitation on how far it can project and how far it can be up on the wall. Those are listed there. They can be externally illuminated, but not backlit. And then the last 2 items are those 2 design items that would be looked at as part of a sign permit application. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. And given the council at the last meeting directed some changes to the ordinance, we place this on as potential introduction and adoption, but you could choose just to introduce.
All right.
Say, David, did we get rid of the limitation?
With
Did
what?
we get rid of the Did we get rid of the limitation of the number of times the sign can be changed?
Well, that is a standard limitation for all changeable copy signs.
Okay.
So that wasn't a new limitation, that's an
Gotcha.
existing limitation.
Okay.
I have questions when you have time.
Rob, go ahead.
All right. A couple of things. Since our last meeting, I've done my homework, since that was really the first time this has been introduced to me. And I'm sure this has been around before, but there's a couple of things that concern me. One is, I think we reach inflection points in any villages. Can you hear me? Okay. I think we reach inflection points in any village's history where you deal with things of charm of a village and you have to weigh it against what retail benefit is there. And we want to be, as we've all discussed and have agreed to, as beneficial and pro-business as we can in this village. We appreciate our retailers and we want to do what we can to help. There's a couple things that I've looked at. I've done my homework on this. I've talked to some of the people in the design review board about this. I have gone and looked at Lake Forest. I've looked at Glencoe. I grew up here, but I've been back here for 20 years. But in between, I lived in towns, Ladue, Missouri, very similar to what we have. The main line in Philadelphia, Pacific Palisades, California, and none of them would allow this type of signage other than in a restaurant, and it would be much smaller. I did the map out of a 24 by 36, 6 square feet, and there's really no need for that size sign. If we're going to agree to do this, there's no need for that size sign unless you're trying to see it on a drive-by from the street. None of our businesses are drive-by. Oh, I know it's not like we're on Skokie Road and we're zipping by and you want to see it. This is additional signage, and it's a very large size for what is traditionally allowed, like for restaurants. And so I think that the ability to do this, what additional benefit is there to the businesses? I know there's perceived benefit. I know this space very well. I've been in retail, I've been in business and run marketing for major companies, including Anheuser-Busch and Allstate, and FTD, and this type of signage there's limited benefit to unless you're trying to stop drive-by traffic, and then it has to be large enough to do it. So I have concerns with the fact, with kind of, we're at a precipice of how much signage and clutter do we allow in the village, in this charming village. This type of signage is really for drive-by or just simply for restaurants when people want to walk by and see what's in there before they actually walk into the restaurant. And this is kind of being expanded as some type of benefit to retail that is unknown, I would say, because, and I have, with my experience, really unknown for this type of business where it's a small community, walk-in businesses, and you have your windows and the signage in the store. People know. So there's several things I have real concerns about, including the size, including how many people get to use this, and including what this is going to look like in our village. I've looked and I've done this in other villages, which I respect, don't have this other than in a restaurant, and it's much smaller. So my 2 cents. I have concerns about it.
Okay, other questions and comments?
David, you added, I don't know if anyone can hear me, I'm all blasting, but anyway, you added general retail sales. I'm looking at the general retail sales categories. So many of them, and I agree with Rob on this, that it would just be, just wouldn't make any sense, to have these. This really seems to be food products, food and beverage service uses. And I don't really see the reason to go to that general retail category. Can you maybe shed some light on that?
So this was as a result of the full council discussion in terms of some council members were open to more businesses being able to have such signs. And so what I heard was that there was more of a concern about the office uses, and in particular certain office uses having such signs or needing such signs. And so that's why we proposed a retail use and those two other food categories as the type of businesses that could have the sign.
Don?
Yeah, so I agree with Trustee Apatow slightly. I do think the 24 by 36 is large. And you probably won't find it in many buildings because there won't be any room to put a 24 by 36 sign given their storefronts and spaces between the windows and space at the doorways. So I guess we could limit it smaller, like 12 by 24. But I'm not so sure you'll get a 24 by 36 anyway. Other than a larger building that kind of is what Bob Dearborn is talking about, do all retailers need it, like a Grand Foods? Well, if a Grand Foods decides to put one up, they probably have room for 24 by 36. And a lot of retailers like the Grand may not even put one up anyway. So I think it's just trying to make this an easy process to manage through the city, I think, and the staff. One thing that I talked about last week or last time we had a meeting about this was through the permit process, I think we need to have the owner's signature of the building, because some buildings, let's take the laundry, could have 4 or 5 businesses inside. You don't want to compete outside for space, and nor do the village. They get in trouble for giving a permit for a sign in a spot that another tenant could have had one. And that can happen quite a few places, I think, in Winnetka, where you got a small building with a split storefront. Other than that, yeah, I do like to see this thing go through, and those are my only comments at this point.
Other thoughts?
Yeah, I have a couple of additional points. One is that I still, when I'm looking at the different kinds of signs, and thank you, David, for putting up the additional wall-mounted signs. There's one thing when you're providing a menu, and it's another thing when you have Subway that has all of these, sort of promotional items up there. It's just, I'm not sure that we can draw a distinction there. between, sort of the informational pieces that we want and, sort of graphic advertising. But I guess that's just something we're going to have to live with if we decide to do the display cases. I would, I still prefer just sticking to the having the menus for restaurants, but I'm open to conversation about that. I don't want all of the, what do I want to say, sort of visual trash, but it may work out fine. I'm a little leery about where it's going to go if we have too many of these up. I would ask that there be a couple of additional contingencies or stipulations put on the display board display case regulation. One would be that the mounting be such that a case could be removed with minimal damage to the wall. I've encountered situations where, glue and stuff is put on the wall to help secure it, and then it's permanently mars the surface. So, David, I don't know what stipulations you could put in, but if a case is to be taken down, that it doesn't, ruin the face of the building. And additionally, in terms of the maintenance, I want to be sure that it's an actionable item relative to the maintenance, that it's not just, please take it down sometime in the future and nothing happens. Addition to it, looking worn out and tattered. Also in terms of that the material in it remain up to date, so that, people don't leave up informational sheets that are out of date. So that's important as well.
Hey, Andy?
Yeah.
No, wait, hold on one sec. I am getting about 10% of the audio right now. Have you been doing any better?
I'm getting a good audio feed.
Okay.
Yep,
I'm going to ask you to take over and chair the meeting, and I'll just sit here like a lump on a log because it's just insane. I can't run a meeting if I can't hear what people are saying. So,
Chris, I don't hear
it's not you,
either.
it's my connection. It's not you.
Well, no, it's mine. It's mine also. Sometimes I hear and sometimes I don't hear anything. So
No, I didn't hear anything that John had to say. I heard half of what Rob had to say. I think I'm doing everybody a disservice by trying to run a meeting I can't even hear. So, Andy, if you're comfortable, I'd ask you to take over. I'm going to go see if I can find my iPad. Maybe the connection on Verizon might be better than with Comcast is dealing right.
Good point. Good try.
Yeah, that might work.
Okay, but get the driver's seat, Andy. Go for it.
All right, no problem. Hey, Rob, I had a question. When in your research, is there a size menu display case that you thought would be more reasonable?
Yeah, it's more like, I think what John was talking, what did you say, John, 14 by 20 or 14 by 18?
Or 12 by 24, so it's 2.5 by 11s or.
Yeah, it is literally about half the size of when I saw at Lake Forest. There was one or two restaurant signs. Ladue had a restaurant sign, but literally it's like 12 by 18 inches, just enough so somebody can look at it's lit, somebody can look at it, see if they want to go in the restaurant. And just one point of clarification, in talking with somebody on the design review board, I think they're a little confused too, I think there was confusion of who wanted this to go to a broader audience or not. They thought it was restaurants too, the person I talked to. So to put, I guess, then that was my big concern about it. I have done the legwork. I do understand retail and what benefits would bring. We talked about some other opportunities to help the village that we bannered around, which I'd like to talk about it later. But I guess there's an inflection point of where this village goes and on the clutter. We approved some park district signs before, which they're kind of all over. I guess it becomes how many signs do we need in our village, and that's kind of where we left it. But I did the homework. I looked at it. None of those other type of communities like ours have this type of thing on every.
How does everyone feel if we took other retail establishments out? So it was just food and beverage.
The tough part with that one is specifically one business, maybe there's others, like a Good Grapes. You know, that's.
Could be beverage though, right?
How do you
She's beverage.
She's beverage.
Well, wouldn't the Little Rickies be a beverage?
It's food.
Ricky's would be food.
Restaurant.
Oh, right, I'm sorry, yeah, right. Okay. Yeah, so I guess we could do food and beverage, yeah.
And I think that's,
I would be okay with that.
the design review board thought that, at least one of the person I talked to, that's what they thought it was anyway. So
I'm sorry, Rob, can you say it again?
I thought that, and the person I talked to in the design review board, I don't think his idea was this was not going to the entire, whoever wants a sign, because that's 150 different signs. I don't know
Right.
what the number is, but it's a lot of signs.
And let me ask about just another dimension. I just kind of want to get a sense of where people are on the dimensions. I just did a little looking at what the standard menu boards are. I think a 12 by 18 is basically one sheet of paper with some space around it. I guess maybe you could get two, right? Yeah.
Two, I think it's two.
Two,
It's
yeah.
it's a fold-out menu.
Okay. Any strong feelings about 12 by 18 versus 24 by 18?
I think there ought to be enough space for a menu to be posted. And I don't know, in terms of the restaurant business, would they, you know, a lot of times menus can have 4 sides or 3
Right.
sides. So,
But
should,
they don't put everything up there. Usually just they do a fold. On 12 by 18, it's in the ballpark, Andy. I'm with you. Whether it's 16 or 18, it doesn't matter. It's just the size.
Yeah.
Or if you just use it as 2 sheets of 11 by 17 paper. So 22 by 34. No, 11 by 34, sorry. So 2 square feet basically, or roughly.
Kristen, do we have any members of the public that want to speak on this? Is Teresa on?
Yes, Teresa is in the call. So
Okay.
when would you like to call for public comment?
Unless anybody objects, I think it'd be helpful to get public comment right now. They've heard kind of what we're thinking
Although-
about.
Before we do that, Andy, I would like to, I think we should probably get some input from restaurateurs on this. I mean, we're making best guess about what restaurateur would like. And Teresa is a beverage, which is great, but we don't have any input from the restaurant business. So unless if we're time pressure to do it today or whatever, but I think it would make sense to get input from them, don't you?
Well, let's see what we've got, and then we can see if you feel like additional comment would be helpful.
Okay.
But right now, we know who we've got. Kristen, do you want to open it up?
Yep.
Sure. Teresa, I'm unmuting your line right now. Teresa.
Okay,
there?
thank you. Yep.
Hi,
Can you hear
Teresa.
me?
Yes.
Hi. At this point, I'm taking it personal. 3 out of 3 calls. I'm not logged in. Joking. Okay, so I actually have quite a few comments, just understandably how the meetings are structured because they're conference calls. So I have a first set of comments on the last meeting things, and some of those have come up already. And then I have some comments on the proposals that David has so artfully put together. So it's going to seem like a lot, and it is, candidly. So I'm a little surprised that if someone wanted to know the impact to retail that, Rob, you didn't reach out to ask me, you know, and so, I mean, I had a budget this equivalent size for over a decade of the village's budget. I've managed teams of 50 to 100. I've been in corporate. That doesn't mean I knew how to run a retail store. And so I would just say taken aback by that, and then I'll move on from that. And I get that beauty is in the eye of the beholder. But I will just tell you, I cannot connect at all how sandwich boards are more village-friendly advertising. They're less attractive, blow away, they clutter the village sidewalks. So I would just say that for me is just a personal disconnect. And I'm comfortable saying that because a lot of these comments are personal. And then I would add the outdoor display box is meant for pedestrians, not for people driving by in cars. And after sitting through many village council meetings on the streetscape, one of the positive results touted of why it needed to move forward was because of increased pedestrian traffic. So I feel like that those two things are not quite balanced. And I would also remind from the those who don't remember from the February 4th meeting is I started with the sandwich board, and then I raised it to that indoor menu sign, and I could measure the increase in people who came in by just having that raised sign, even though they still had to bend over for it. So, I mean, in hindsight, I should have picked and tallied numbers, but I'm comfortable with my opinion as someone who's here 6 days a week. I also found the concerns on the display box were inconsistent with the acceptance of large signs and banners hanging in many window stores. And if the size, 2 by 3 feet, is going to be decreased, I'd like to hear from those that want it decreased to explain what their understanding is on the impact of the display case selection and use. You guys were just starting on that. My next comment is LED wasn't part of the DRB's recommendation. And if there's a neurotic business owner that wants to print and change their paper sign every hour, I don't understand why you care. And also, what paid village employee is going to monitor how many times a paper sign is changed? I find that to be like a nit. That's taking up too much time. And then here's the part that's really not going to make me popular anymore, less popular, I should say. The village staff review and associated steps are overreaching. I have a lease, as does every business owner, I don't care what service you provide, that says what I can and cannot do to both the interior and exterior of the store. The village has no role in monitoring that I'm holding up my end of the lease. That's an extreme government overreach. And I also, it's been a few years, I don't recall getting that letter for my awnings, and those awnings have deeper holes going into the building. So I just find that overreach. You're not in the contract, you're not held liable for anything. And I would also comment on some of the proposals that the awnings are significantly larger and much more visible advertising tool. Most awnings, I've walked it again after the last village meeting, are the colors of their logo. Mine is, it's purple, right? And I look across the street. The color of that awning doesn't match the building because that's not Bruno's colors. And so yet for signs, you want to have a more stringent review for a much smaller thing that it fits with the facade of the building. So then if you're going to do that, moving forward, require that for every awning. And let's see how that goes because it's typically logo colors. And then after the last meeting, I mean, I have a lot to say, obviously, on this. I was really surprised, first of all, that some people didn't know what the display box actually was and that they had to be custom or whatever. But so I went intentionally Googled trying to find any offensive outdoor display box. And just to be clear, I used curse words, body parts, political issues, and various colorful adjectives. And I couldn't find anything other than the same old one. So I'm not sure. I would expect that if it's going to require a staff review, that there's two things. Show us what's not acceptable, and that also the village, I think you need to commit to a turnaround duration, and I would expect that duration to be 2 to 3 days, not the standard duration that anyone's experienced. In terms of the amendment of modifications, I get why 6 feet the top, which now it doesn't even sound like that'll happen. I emailed David because I wanted to have the information prior to getting into the meeting. So the average height of an American male is 5'9", and it's like a picture in your home. You shouldn't be looking down at it. And if you go 6 feet, most people will be looking down. So I'm simply requesting that that be raised to eye level at 6.5 feet. And it should be noted, although I'm not sure I'll even get a sign at this point, I won't be able to do that because I have to reuse the holes because that's an amendment in my lease that I'm contractually obligated to that has nothing to do with the village. And then I am in firm belief that we need more Winnetka and business district advertising. And so I'm very uncomfortable with the verbiage, and perhaps I'm misunderstanding it, that it's for postings by the commercial establishment only. So here are some examples that would cut that off, that just don't make sense. So one is, there was a Black Lives Matter march. Wild rumor is that it was without a permit, which kind of stung many of us business owners. But 2 of the West Elm business owners put signs in their window encouraging people to participate, not saying join us, not do this, not that, just to participate. And that's freedom of speech. And so to put these restrictions on an outdoor display box, I just think it's immense overreaction. And then here are things that I've advertised in my email blast and my chalkboards, and that I would expect to advertise in an outdoor display box. The village Christmas tree lighting has nothing to do with me. I advertise that. The farmer's market, I'm not in it. I want to build up the community. Taking the village caucus survey, congratulating Fred's on winning one of the best outdoor patios on the North Shore. I also promote some of the key book stall events because we have an overlap of customer base, not all of them, but key ones like Hillary Clinton book signing, Scott Turow, Zoom reading, book reading. And so I would ask, if you're going to limit the verbiage, I think you need to outline, what are you so afraid of? What do you think is going to be stated that is going to be offensive, rather than this very strong reaction that, I don't know, the sky's going to fall in. I just struggle with that. And then my final comment is, I'm still waiting on a response to my request to post the priority criteria and the queue of requests on the village website, and that totally fits with transparency by the village. And I don't want to dwell on that. We're now at 6 months, but if you look at what happened through it, it's not transparent and the criteria is not evident. So thank you. I'm done. Oh, wait,
So,
one more thing.
Yeah,
Nope, just kidding. I'm really done. Sorry.
So,
Go ahead.
Teresa, are you still
Yep.
there? Okay.
Yep.
I thank you for your comments. In terms of the size, what size display box have you contemplated for your store?
So I have to stick to, because again, the contract in my lease, I was doing 2 and it wasn't quite 3 feet. But when I looked at what I could hang, I'm not going to be allowed to drill new holes, which I respect.
Right.
But how 2 to 3 feet, I don't think when you're, I'm going to speak on behalf of restaurants because I actually talk to the owners. You know, most restaurants, the menus go horizontal, not vertical.
Right.
You know, so, and while most Q1 through Q3, I would have 1 piece of paper up, and I'm just going to exclude COVID because, you know, we can't build regulations around it. But for Q4, which carries my store for the first 6 weeks of the following year, I have a lot going on, and I would have 2 pieces of paper.
Would a 24 by 18 box be enough for what you envision?
I'm sorry. I'm gonna. Am I on speaker?
Yeah,
I'm not. Can you
fine,
say it
Teresa.
again? It's echoing. That's all. It's echoing. I didn't hear the question. Could you please say that again?
Would a 24 by 18 box work for you?
I want to say yes, but I'm going to reserve on that till I can go online like I did before and look to see where it drills, where it hooks on the back.
Understood. Okay, thank you.
Because
so much.
I have to use the same holes.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Kristen, do we have any other members of the public that want to speak on this?
No, we do not.
Okay. And I see we've got Chris back. Chris, you want to stay in the passenger seat or do you want the driver's seat? You're on mute.
You're still on mute.
I'll unmute you, Chris.
There we go.
You're unmuted now.
Thank you.
Hey, David, could you close down that, the screen share there?
Finish this one up, Andy.
Got it. Well, I know we've got a lot of important things on the agenda yet tonight, and we don't want to beat this to death. My suggestion would be 2 things. And maybe get a straw poll here. If we took other retail businesses out and we left this for restaurants and food and beverage, And then reduce the sign to 24 by 18. Those would be my suggestions, just having heard what everyone has to say. I think, I don't want to see this on the agenda for like 3, 4, I feel like it's important to move it along. John?
Yeah, and maybe also limit it to menu display. It's to support the restaurant, the menu, people can walk by. It's not for big letters that say sale. It's not talking about anything political or, nothing but the menu of what's being offered at that restaurant or food service.
In terms of just, my suggestion was 2 simple edits with the, otherwise I think, we're looking at this thing coming back yet again, which.
Can you repeat that again? You broke up.
Eliminating other retail establishments. So it's just for food, beverage, and restaurants, and reducing the sign to 24 by 18. So we're not looking at a 6-foot deal. We're looking at a 3.5 foot.
So they could, so an establishment could put anything in that display box, even if for a business down the street or.
Yeah, I would defer to Peter on this, but I don't really want to get into content regulation.
Okay. All right.
Just some points of clarification. So the wording currently is that what is displayed on the box, in the box, is products or services offered by the business.
Thank you.
So that's the current wording. I just want everyone to understand that's what the current wording is.
So based on that, Andy, I'm with you.
Cool. Anybody else? Yay or nay?
Yeah, I'm okay where you're going. I don't know if 18 by 24. I mean, I've mapped out 18. I think 2-piece 8.5 by 11 fit fine, and an 18 by 14. I don't know what I agree. I'm okay with doing it by limiting that. I just don't know what the right size is, guys, unless I see it.
Yeah. And keep in mind, there's not a lot of establishments that are going to allow that big of a sign by their door. There's not that much storefront or a solid wall on a lot of facilities.
So if somebody wants to do 18 by 20, I'm fine with that, because it gives enough room to do what you need to do.
I would say 18 by 24, just based on what I see as commercially available. That's a common size.
Good.
And that's measuring from outer edge. So any
right.
Okay.
It's almost half the space, but it should be a generally available size.
Yeah.
And what we probably do is in the language, put no larger than 3 square feet. So if someone comes up with some unique size that 18 by 24 is 3 square feet. So we're not saying it has to be that, but
yes,
a total maximum size.
I like that approach. We have some consensus on that?
Yes.
Penny, you're good? Jack?
Yeah.
Bob?
So just so I understand, because I'm only hearing about a half of this. Product uses and food and beverage service uses with a 3-foot square size limitation. Is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah.
I'm good with that.
And we can see how that goes. All right. So David, can you make those edits, and can we make a motion based on the edited? What's the best way of proceeding? Maybe Peter or David, what would you like to do? Bring it back.
There's no reason you need to waive introduction. You can move to introduce it, and the motion can be subject to the amendments that you just mentioned. We'll make those changes, bring it back for final approval at the next meeting.
Great. And then that allows you a chance to ask around anymore if you all want to. So let's do it that way. Can I get a motion to introduce as amended?
So moved.
Second.
Rob, you want to do a vote?
Trustee Apatow.
Yes.
Trustee Coladarchi.
Yes.
Trustee Swerk.
Yes.
Trustee Dearborn.
Yes.
Trustee Lampier.
Any?
Trustee Lanfair?
Yes.
Trustee Crichton?
Yes.
And it carries. So it's introduced as amended.
Great. Thank you. I'll turn the baton back to Chris.
Thanks. Lee. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, hopefully my cell service is more stable than my internet service, so we'll see how this goes. All right. Next item is 8B, temporary tent zoning amendment public hearing. This is for ordinance number MC4 2020, amending regulations to allow outdoor tents for schools. This is up for introduction and adoption, and I would like to open the public hearing. David Schoen will review the code amendments and the District 36 request. Then we will take public comment, and after the public comment, then we will go to council questions and discussions. So just stand down until we get through the public on this, and then we can have at it after that. So David, you can go ahead and take it away.
Sure. So the school district would like to have some tents for the students to use for educational purpose as we deal with the COVID-19 pandemic. Our zoning code does not make a distinction between permanent and temporary structures in terms of zoning regulations. And though temporary tents would be required to comply with our space, bulk, and yard setback requirements, as well as use limitations. Given that these tents are associated with a school, it would fall under their special use requirements of the zoning code. Zoning codes often have other requirements for temporary uses and structures. Ours does not. So tonight, what we're going to consider is an amendment to allow schools to use temporary structures in the form of a tent. As I mentioned, the school district would like to use tents, canopies for outdoor spaces. They have provided images of the 20 by 30 tents they propose to use, and those are included in your packet. The proposed ordinance would allow the village manager to approve tents on a temporary basis for a limited period of time, as noted here. Tents would be exempt from all lot, space, and bulk standards except yard setbacks, as we feel those are the ones that will have the greatest impact on neighboring properties. The village council approval is required for anything longer than what the village manager can approve, and for up to 180 days during a 12-month period. And why that is under building code regulations that once a tent is up for more than 180 days, there's other requirements that are required for the continuing use of those. Also, the council can grant relief from the yard setback requirements. So working with the school district, they have presented their proposal for tents at the various schools. Those are included in the materials you have received. There are certain locations where they don't meet the standard yard setback requirements. So the resolution that you would be approving this evening would also grant approval for those yard setbacks that are not being met. So again, here are the other schools. I should also note a couple of them are using parks. For instance, West Elm Park, and you have a letter from the park district demonstrating they're working with the school district for the use of the park for these tents. So as President Rintz mentioned, there's a public hearing, and then you have an ordinance to consider to amend the zoning code to give us the authority to grant approval for the tents, which you would then do through adopting a resolution. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
No, we're going to move to public comment.
We do.
Kristen, go ahead and do your thing.
We do have 3 public comments. The first one is from Liz Kunkel. Please approve the application for outdoor tents requested by Winnetka Public School District 36 and amend the necessary regulations to allow such tents. Using such tents to function as outdoor classrooms is not only a good idea because of the pandemic, it is a good idea in general, as there are academic and health benefits associated with spending time outdoors, including higher GPAs, better test scores, decreased behavioral problems, reduced symptoms of ADD and ADHD, better sleep, reduced blood pressure, decreased stress, and increased immune function. Thanks again, Liz Kunkel, 1303 Holly Lane, Nutrier in District 36 parent, Go Green Winnetka founder, and EFC commissioner. The second comment is from Howard Hess. Dear members of the Village Council, I appreciate this opportunity to express my support for District 36 proposal to use outdoor tents as a temporary measure. The well-being of students and staff should be our community's primary concern as the academic year approaches. Even if there were some unwanted impacts on the neighborhood, and I believe there will be none, they would be far, far outweighed by the positive impact of the improved ventilation and social distancing enabled by tents. Minimizing community transmission helps us all. While I no longer have children in District 36 schools, I live at 300 Woodland Avenue, directly across Hawthorne Lane from the Greeley Playground. We can see the playground from every window on the south side of our house. I would welcome the sight of tents there as school resumes. Sincerely, Howard Hess. And the third comment says to Winnetka Village Council, please support School District 36 use of educational tents and are more than grateful that this treasured open space allows our village the flexibility to serve its families and students during this time of crisis. And we are very thankful for both our teachers and their creative and heroic efforts to reopen our schools. We hope and pray this crisis will end soon and look forward to a time when beautiful West Elm Park can go back to nature once again, a green space for all of us. It's signed Ann Wilder, Barbara Williams, and Colleen Danstrom, street neighbors. And that concludes the public comment.
Great, thank you. There's nobody in the waiting queue that wants to speak to us on this, Kristen?
No, we do have 3 representatives from the school district when we're ready to move to that part of the agenda.
Sure. Well, I mean, do you want to go ahead and promote them now? Oh, there we go.
Sure.
Right.
She's in favor of the tents.
This is Brad Goldstein. I just wanted to thank the village and David in particular in helping us through this process. This is going to be an experience for all of us. We're very happy with the company that we're working with. They're going to come out and show us how to install these properly. They are wind rated up to 50 miles an hour. We have a process in place for installation and taking the canopies off if the winds do go over 30 miles an hour. We will be installing them hopefully August 20th, and then having them down after by mid-November. And then if we do need them in the fall or in the spring, we will put them up approximately April 1st through the end of the year. And hopefully it will allow us classroom space outdoors and the opportunity to get kids outside during the day, to get them mask breaks as well, and to help us resume school in the fall.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me? This is Trisha Cassanda, superintendent. Sorry, my audio wasn't working right away, but I do appreciate all the collaboration between the Park District, the village, Chief Burkowski, we kind of worked together on this, had some ideas. How can we safely bring our students back to campus in the midst of this pandemic. And just this became such a creative idea that both, you heard our neighbors are supporting, our teachers are very excited, and of course our students. And it will give us kind of the safest airflow for sure, being outdoors, but also provide shelter and give us, without air conditioning most of our schools, there also is some relief in that area as well. So we will definitely take advantage of these, and it's a village effort here at a time when we all need to come together. So we appreciate that.
And this is Dawn Livingston. I'm president of the school board. I just want to really thank our Park District partners for all that they've been willing to do in helping us with this. Bottom line, we are doing everything we can to get our kids back into school, and this is a critical piece. We need the tents. So I'm really hoping that you guys can find a way to make this work. Our community, our district, our kids really need it. So thanks.
Great, thanks, Dawn. Okay, we'll open it up to the trustees now. Any comments or questions? John, I see your hand is up. I can't see anybody, so.
Okay, no problem. So anyway, I'm obviously all for the tents. Anything to get schools back to some normalcy and students together is always a plus. The one thing I've come across on tents in the past as well as recently is that they don't get put up properly. They blow down. And I have experience in going through tent permits through the city of Chicago, even for like a one weekend sales tent for a furniture store. They require structural engineering support for ballast or anchoring of the tents for wind. The last thing we want to do is make, the last thing we want to have happen is the tents hurt any children or students or teachers. So just somehow through the village building permit process, that should be resolved. But as far as the zoning goes for the allowance of the tents, I think it's a great idea.
Great, thanks.
Question relative to the 180 days. If for example, school district wanted to use it for a summer camp next summer, would it be possible to give them an extension, or is that not possible? I mean, if they needed to use it again next year, can we give them permission beyond 180 days?
Currently as drafted, it's up to 180 days. I would give the school district an opportunity to comment on it in terms of we reviewed that or ran that past them. And they didn't have any comments regarding that limitation.
I mean, I just am thinking of the fact that this is not a normal zoning situation. This is a public health emergency. So I don't, know if we can use language like, in a public emergency, it can be, it can be all year round if they wanted it. I mean, it's a unusual situation, and I would just rather put the language in now rather than making it bureaucratic later.
Yeah, Patty, the only issue I think that I might have with that is that, I've spoken to some of the neighbors who are usually pretty active in these issues. And, they've all been led to believe by what we have in front of us that it's a 6-month deal at the worst. And most of them have bought onto that. Now if we were to open it up and extend it, I think we would have to go back to those same people and let them know that there's a potential that these things could be longer, or that there wouldn't be a process to do that extension. So, that it's more my, just like you heard the fellow that lives across from Greeley, he's really happy to see that we're doing something and he welcomes it, but obviously he'll welcome when they're gone too. And Ann, Barb, and I forget who the third one are, basically echoed the same sentiment that, the more this looks like a permanent opportunity, the more difficult those conversations might be for the people supporting it now.
Okay, well, I was proposing that in light of the current public health emergency, but it was just a suggestion.
Yeah, this is going crazy next spring, and we're past the 180 days. I don't think there's any problem, coming back and just re-upping this, but I think that's kind of where we need to be right now, based on the fact that a lot of information sharing went on. Go on, Peter.
I was just going to point out that it's 180 days within a 12-month period. It's not a calendar year. So if they use some of it now, and then they're off December, January, February, March, they'll still have days to use within the 12 months.
Well, right, but I mean, potentially they can need it for 9 months, but it's not that big a deal. I mean, you all have thought about that, so who knows what the future will bring. Hopefully something good.
A vaccine.
Yeah. I think it's great. This is Rob.
Yeah, go ahead, Rob. I'm sorry.
No, I think it's a prudent thing to do and get it moving, and I'll help put the tents up. It's a good idea.
Andy, you're still clear here. You got any?
We're all in favor here, and I think it'll be my kids will be excited to go to school like in a tent. They'll like it. So, Dawn and
Right,
Brad
thank you.
and Trish, I know you've been working so hard, and I know there's so many different pressures, and just great job thinking creatively. And thank you to all of your administration and to the teachers. Everybody is really under a lot of stress, and to see you come together with this kind of a proposal, it's nice to see. So thank you.
I agree. Jack, well, I've got you on the screen. You have anything you'd like to add or ask? And
No, I think it's an excellent idea. I would have been in favor of being in a tent in school anyway back in the day. I'd like to do my job in a tent out in my yard, so I love the idea.
Bob, are you with us? Bob Horn?
Yep, I'm with you, Chris. I think it's great. I see that Peter's got the appropriate liability language in here. That's the only thing I was looking at. John Peterson outlined it for the Park District, and Peter has it here for the village as well in terms of liability coverage, et cetera. So I think it's a great idea.
Got it. Great. Well, I think everybody's weighed in, right? This is crazy. Now I've got to go back and forth on the screen again, but waiving introduction. Does anybody have heartburn on waiving introduction?
No, that's a good idea.
Let's do it.
Okay, I'll go ahead and ask for a motion to waive introduction of ordinance number MC 3/2020. Oh, wait a minute. Hold on. Wait. I hereby close the public hearing.
Oh,
Okay. So, and my notes are a mess here. So we're waiving intro on MC 420. Is that correct, Peter? Rob?
Correct.
Correct.
Do I have a motion to waive introduction of ordinance number MC 4/2020?
So moved.
second?
Roll call vote?
Trustee Kripe,
Yes.
trustee Lampier,
Yes.
trustee Apatow,
Yes.
trustee Swerk,
Yes.
trustee Dearborn,
Yes.
trustee Caladarchi.
Yes.
Great, that motion carries. Thank you. Okay, now may I have a motion to adopt ordinance number MC 4/2020?
So moved.
Second?
Trustee Apatow,
Yes.
trustee Lampier,
Yes.
trustee Swerk,
Yes.
trustee Dearborn,
Yes.
trustee Kripe,
Yes. Yes.
yes, trustee Caladarchi.
Yes.
Carries.
Carries, thank you. Okay, now we go on to resolution number R53/2020, approving application for outdoor tent, School District 36 for adoption. To adopt resolution number R53/2020.
So move?
Second.
Roll call vote?
Trustee Lampier,
Yep.
trustee Apatow,
Yes.
trustee Dearborn,
Yes.
trustee Swerk,
Yes.
trustee Kripe,
Yes.
trustee Caladarchi.
Yes.
That motion carries. Trish, Dawn, and Brad, good luck. We're behind you 100%. You know where to find us if you need us, and I look forward to looking out my front window and seeing those tents across the street. So
Appreciate it. Thank you,
best
Chris.
luck. Sure.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, we can now move on from there to item C, which is ordinance number M11-2020, 1405 Scott Avenue. This is annexation, rezoning, public hearing, introduction, and possible adoption. This request for annexation follows a formal process the village has adopted to provide relief for homeowners with lots partially in Glencoe and partially in Winnetka. Those that wish to locate entirely in Winnetka. We've had a few of these over the past couple of years, and this is another one of those sorts. So David here, okay, I'm going to open the public hearing, and David Schoen is here to review the application.
Thank you. As President Rintz said, this is one of the lots where a portion of it is in Glencoe and a portion of it is in Winnetka, 1405 Scott. They're petitioning to have all of it annexed within the village of Winnetka. As President Rintz mentioned, at one point in time, there were a number of properties along here, all of them along Scott here that were split lots. In 2006, the village entered into an intergovernmental agreement with Glencoe to establish up a process by which all these lots would be annexed into Winnetka. So since then, all but 12 of the 58 had been annexed into the village. In 2018, we had a property owner, a new property owner of one of the lots that was not annexed, approach the village wanting to annex into the village. So we entered into a new intergovernmental agreement with Glencoe to set up a process by which we would annex these properties. The village of Glencoe has taken action on this request. They did that at their July council meeting, and we continue to follow the process that was established by the IGA. So this evening, we have the ordinance for your consideration. We place it as the potential to waive introduction and adopt, given that it is consistent with our intergovernmental agreement with Glencoe. So with that, I'll turn it back to President Rintz.
Thank you. Okay. First off, Kristen, is there anybody out there in the waiting room who wants to speak on this item?
There's not members of the public, but there is the applicant.
And does he wish to make a statement? I mean, you could check real quick for us.
Hi, Tad, I'm unmuting you. Would you like to speak to the council?
Hi, sure. Yeah, I was approached by, or I got a letter from the village last summer letting me know as a new owner that all but 12 homeowners on Scott opted to do this back in 2006. So if I wanted to consider it, you'd be open to it. So I looked into it and it sounded like a reasonable proposal that might save me some tax money, and the village was kind enough to offer to reimburse me some of my survey fees. So it seems sort of like a win-win. So I went through the paperwork, and it's taken me 12 months to do it, but it's in the works. So thank you.
Thank you, Ted. See, but by doing this, you are then a full red-blooded Winnetkin.
That's right. That's right.
And we get full financial benefit of your extended citizenship. So thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
So, well, thanks. Okay, any trustees have questions for David or for Ted?
You know, Chris, this is Bob, and I remember going through this whenever a year or so ago, and I'm glad the village reached out to Tad and other residents on Scott. Hopefully we can clean this up, you know, along that street once and for all. And I don't think this takes a lot of time and mental gymnastics here to get this approved.
I agree. Any other comments or questions?
Yeah, I actually grew up on a split lot at 278 Chicago. 278 Scott Road, and it took me years to recover. Is this a one-way street? Was it always that there? Does anybody want to go to Glencoe, or is this always all we're just taking all of them to Winnetka?
All of them will be annexed. All of them will be annexed to Winnetka.
Okay. Is there any additional burden, or is there any reason not to do this?
Oh, we actually got in a better place.
Okay, good.
So, anybody else?
Get it done.
Great. First question. Okay, I will now close the public hearing and ask if we have consensus. Somebody's blown in their microphone. If we have consensus to waive intro.
Yes.
I think so.
Penny, you okay with that? Okay. I can't see Bob. Bob, you all right?
Definitely.
Okay, sounds good. All right, well, then I'll go ahead and ask for do I have a motion to waive introduction of ordinance number M11 2020?
So moved.
So moved.
Second?
Roll call vote?
Trustee Dearborn? Trustee Dearborn?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
Trustee Lampier?
Yes.
Trustee Swerk?
Yes.
Trustee Apatoff?
Yes.
Trustee Kripe?
Yes.
Trustee Caladarchi?
Yes.
That motion carries, and we'll move forward, and I may have a motion to adopt ordinance number M11 2020.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Trustee Apatoff?
Yes.
Trustee Lampier?
Yes.
Trustee Caladarchi?
Yes.
Swerk?
Yes.
Trustee Kripe?
Yes.
Trustee Dearborn?
Yes.
That motion carries. Congratulations, Tad. Welcome to Winnetka fully, and thanks for all the hard work. So we appreciate the
That's
cooperation.
great.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for the opportunity.
Okay, moving forward, guys, we're moving on to item E, resolution number R51 2020, Stormwater Wetland Engineering Services. This is up for adoption. After much hard work by staff, the village attorney, Trustee Kripe, and Steve, and just about everybody in the food chain, the village is finally ready to embark on preliminary engineering and permitting its wetland stormwater detention project in the Cook County Forest Preserve. Steve is going to go through the scope of work and the cost estimates in a minute. And I just wanted to say one thing on this, is that, over the past 4 years, I've really pushed hard to spend as little money as we possibly could until we were certain that this project was viable and had the potential to move forward. I've squeezed Steve and his consultants every possible way I could think of so that we could do this thing. I don't want to say on the cheap, but we really tried to manage every single penny to make sure that if something did blow up along the way, that we wouldn't be holding the bag for another big engineering bill. With finalizing the agreements with the Park District and getting acknowledgement of that accomplishment from the Forest Preserve, it's time for us to go ahead, start creating the documentation we need to secure the final agreement with the Forest Preserves and move from a memorandum of understanding to a full-blown licensing agreement. So a lot of the work that we're asking for Strand to begin on now is really tied to making sure that we can secure the final agreement with the Forest Preserves and to start refining our cost models so we can talk a little bit more about financing and budget. So have you promoted Steve, Kristen?
Yes.
Where is he? Oh, there he is. If I see Mike.
Good evening, everyone.
Hey, Steve.
It's good to be back here to talk about stormwater. We haven't had an opportunity to do that for a while. And I guess the last time we talked about stormwater, I was unfortunately self-quarantining way back at the beginning of the pandemic. So I've missed you all. I've got a PowerPoint to kind of walk through some of the steps that we've taken and also the next steps with respect to this agreement. So Kristen, if you could move on to the next slide. You'll find the materials for this beginning on page 79 of your agenda packet. And I wanted to elaborate a little bit on what President Rintz had laid out. We actually started work on this project back in September of 2015. We brought Strand Associates on board, and their task was to find a way to provide meaningful flood relief from a 100-year event for properties in western and southwestern Winnetka that kept the water on the west side of town, draining where it naturally wants to go, which is west of the Skokie River. So we started that work in September 2015 after a significant amount of public engagement and investigations by Strand and a lot of creative thinking and back and forth with the community. The Village Council adopted the stormwater vision in 2016 and directed staff to begin negotiations with the Forest Preserve District on the major storage project on Forest Preserve property, which is the linchpin of making this all work. Negotiations took about 11 months. In the following August, the Forest Preserve and the village concluded a memorandum of understanding for the storage project. That was good news, but there was a little bit of a catch. The Forest Preserve didn't want to be kind of left holding the bag for all of the storage. So one of the terms of the memorandum of understanding was that we had to obtain cooperation from our sister government agencies that also own open space in the village to provide storage on some of their open space properties. So starting in September of 2017, we began negotiating with New Trier High School District, District 36, and the Park District. And it became apparent that the first piece that was going to have to fall was New Trier High School, because that's the next upstream space from the Forest Preserve. It took nearly 2 years and a lot of back and forth, particularly within the high school district. But in 2019, we concluded that intergovernmental agreement. And then in the ensuing 9 or 10 months, we concluded agreements with District 36 and the Park District. That allowed us to go back to the Forest Preserve, provide those intergovernmental agreements to them for review, to kind of check the box, to complete that step of the intergovernmental agreement. And what that does for us is that brings us to the point where we can now actually start working with the Forest Preserve on the project, because they have some semblance of certainty that that they're not going to be the only ones providing stormwater storage for all of Winnetka's water. So unfortunately, we can't move anywhere with the Forest Preserve until we develop a significant amount of detail for the project. So the next step really is engineering and permitting with the Forest Preserve on this wetland project. If you can move to the next slide, Kristen. The reason that this is important is really the way the village is laid out. If we're going to provide any kind of meaningful drainage relief for the village, the water from the west end of the village has to go into the Skokie River. And the only place that all of the water from essentially west of Green Bay Road and south of Tower Road can enter the Skokie River is through that Forest Preserve parcel on just south of the landfill along Winnetka Avenue. All of the storm water from roughly 2/3 of the village has to drain through that parcel into the river. And the only way that we can provide meaningful relief is through large amounts of storage, because we're limited by both topography and some regulatory agencies on how much water we can dump directly into the river. So we have to store it. And the way that we have to do the storage is from the outlet working our way back. So the project that we developed, next slide, please. has a network of conveyance pipes, which are shown there in green, red, and blue, that brings the water to storage facilities in the open spaces on the west end of town. And the project that we're looking at is circled there in the dashed oval on the Forest Preserve project south of the landfill. Next slide, please. So that Forest Preserve project is a storage wetland, provides a little over 107 acre-feet of storage, which is about 55% of the total storage needed for the vision to work. All of the water from the area south of Willow enters into that storage facility roughly at Sunset Road and Hibbard Road. And then all of the water from north of Willow also goes into that storage facility after passing through additional upstream storage on Duke Childs Field and the Par 3 golf course. It gets kind of stored in a meandering, restored, created wetland on that roughly 49-acre parcel, and then gets pumped at a controlled rate via our existing pump station into the Skokie River. And then the excavated soil from the wetland in order to create that storage wetland, that's going to be moved up on top of the closed landfill, and we're going to reconfigure the landfill with that excavated soil. So that's the project that is really the next step to move forward with. That is the subject of this engineering contract. Next slide, please. So really the only path forward, as I mentioned, is to begin working on this project, which is currently a conceptual engineering. We can't really take any more action or obtain any of the approvals that we need without additional engineering. We're not going to get final approval from the Forest Preserve. We're not going to get the necessary Army Corps and MWRD permits. We're not going to be able to develop additional detail for the project costs, no bidding construction drawings without additional engineering. So that's what we're bringing to you. Next slide, please. So the scope of work, and this is laid out in attachment number 2, starting on page 82 of your packet, is several categories of items. First, there's some items in the intergovernmental agreement that require some additional significant amount of work. One of the key conditions that the Forest Preserve placed on us is to make sure that there are water quality improvements implemented in the system upstream of the Forest Preserve property before that stormwater runoff enters their property. They recognize that the water is not going to be pristine coming out of a suburban neighborhood, but they also want to make sure that it's better quality than what's running off essentially uncontained at this point. So part of this contract is to develop the necessary existing benchmarking and sampling of the water quality that's coming in now, so that we can demonstrate the improvements that meet the requirements of the intergovernmental agreement. Preliminary engineering on the project includes topographic surveying, subsurface soil investigations, the planning and permitting that's necessary for reconfiguring the landfill. That has to go through an Illinois EPA permit process. Developing plans up to about the 30% complete level. Specifications, updating the modeling to make sure that the project still performs the way it is intended. And then additional updated cost estimates for village and Forest Preserve review. And then beginning the process of applying for permits with the Army Corps and other necessary agencies. Next slide, please. Upon completion of the preliminary engineering and village and Forest Preserve review, They would move into final engineering, advancing the plans and specifications up to about 75% for an additional kind of final review, updating the final cost estimates and the hydrologic modeling. They would develop a post-construction maintenance program. The village is going to be obligated to maintain the new wetland for the life of the project. And then developing final bidding and construction projects so that the project could ultimately be out for bid for construction. There are some additional services that we anticipate might come up, but they're unknown at this time. There's a certain number of meetings that are in the scope if we're asking Strand to prepare for and attend additional meetings or assist with public engagement. If there's additional surveying or off-site wetland design that might come out of the Army Corps permit process, and then working through grant or funding applications. Those are all additional services that Strand could provide, but they would have to be authorized in advance by the village. They're not part of the base contract. Next slide, please. So this is a table that shows the project fees for the design project, kind of by work activity and by the phase of the project. So you can see that the total engineering, including those additional, if authorized services, is just under $691,000. About a little over $308,000 is related to the storage and culvert design. About $155,000 is related to the landfill permitting. The Army Corps and additional permit applications is just under $60,000. And then ancillary services, primarily the water quality program and the sampling program, about $168,000. You can see that the hard engineering for the landfill work and the storage and culvert projects average about 8.5% of construction costs, which is well within kind of expected range for a construction project of this complexity, for a total not to exceed of $690,077, including the additional if authorized services. Next slide, please. The Strand anticipates roughly a 13-month schedule given notice to proceed of this month. They would estimate completion of the engineering work by September of 2021. That is contingent on how fast we can get through the forest preserve and whether we're still in a pandemic or not. But in the normal world, that would be the schedule that we would anticipate. That would allow bidding and construction in the winter of 2021 or spring of 2022, depending on whether the forest preserve would prefer that we work on frozen ground or not. Next slide. So we're recommending adoption of Resolution R51-2020, which would extend a professional services agreement to Strand Associates for the design of this project for a lump sum fee not to exceed $650,100, plus those additional services if authorized by the village as they may come up, and those would be billed at hourly rate plus expenses. We'll take any questions at this time.
Okay, actually, before you guys dig in on Steve, Rob, you know, I've mentioned this in pieces to most of the trustees, but I think it's important to understand that there's been another significant positive development on the stormwater front. And I'd, you know, Rob, if you can just take the mic for a moment and share with everyone our good fortune in working with State Representative Robin Gable and State Senator Laura Fine.
Definitely. Thank you, Chris. I think as the council knows, the last several legislative sessions, the village stormwater team has been lobbying for grants and funding for our stormwater project. The state hasn't been consistent with a capital bill, but things did come together this year. And during the legislative session this spring, we stayed in contact with Representative Gable and Senator Fine, and the capital bill and the state budget was approved in May. And much to our pleasure, there were 3 allocations to the village. The first sum of $16 million sponsored by Representative Gable, allocated for Village of Winnetka stormwater management improvements. And then another sum of $12 million, which is to be allocated for a regional project with the Cook County Forest Preserve and the Village of Winnetka, which is the site that we're talking about this evening. In addition, Senator Fine authorized $300,000 for infrastructure projects, pretty much earmarked for downtown improvements to offset some of the costs for streetscape. So another $28,300,000, which will factor into our financing discussions once we get through the pricing exercise. This is capital money that will be bonded once the revenue stream is established, and we expect that to happen within the next 2 to 3 year window. But this capital bill has been approved by the Illinois legislature and signed by the governor. So it is signed into law. Now it's a matter of getting the financing shored up and then the grant allocations coming to the village. So it's great news.
Yeah, it's fantastic. 28 million. I have to tell you guys that, Robin Gable has been just a pleasure to work with over the past couple of years. Just when you don't think someone isn't listening, something like this comes up and proves you wrong. She called Rob literally from the floor at the 11th at 11:59 and started asking him for numbers that she needed to plug in on behalf of this village. So she was down there on the floor, really working her butt off for us, and did a lot of heavy lifting to make sure that we would have access to these funds. So the community owes a great debt of gratitude to her hard work, and obviously subsequently Laura Fine really put forth a lot of effort as well and shored things up for us to make sure that this is something that actually would come to fruition. So remember them in your nightly prayers. They are 2 wonderful people who have become angels for the Village of Winnetka. So with that, now I'll throw it open to you guys for questions for Rob or Steve.
Hey, Chris, it's
I'll
Bob
start,
here.
sir.
If I could just ask a couple of questions of Steve.
Go ahead, Rob. Bob.
Can I?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Steve, going back to the scope of services page, I think it's page 88 of the packet. So it shows the percentage of this contract, if you will, to the total engineering construction at about 12%. Is this? Are you saying here that this project is a $60 million project, or what are we looking? I mean, where do those percentages come from?
Sure. The 11.87%. That is the engineering total of $690,077 as a percent of the construction estimate of $5.8 million. That's engineering as a percentage of construction cost.
So what is, I don't understand that construction estimate. What are those numbers at the bottom of the page there? The 5 million.
That's the estimated hard construction cost for the project to construct the storage on the Forest Preserve project, plus the 2 inlet culverts, plus the work to move the soil up on top of the landfill.
Okay.
That's a portion of the overall vision related to basically this Forest Preserve project.
Okay, I think I picked most of that up there. So, and how does that 5.8 million compare to where we were on the project, you know, in terms of budgeting 4 or 5 months ago? I mean, is this, I mean, be in line here or not?
Yeah, the estimate for this piece of the project hasn't changed at all. We've had to make some tweaks to some of the other storage projects farther upstream that are not part of this work as we went through some of the trade-offs with the school district and the park district, et cetera. But this project was pretty well finalized in terms of scope and cost when we concluded the MOU with the Forest Preserve back in 2017.
Okay. And first of all, let me just say, Chris, I agree with you. That's, you know, the state of Illinois support on this is terrific. So I guess my question, Steve, is, so here we are with this engineering study and so on. What are the next steps that we go through? And Chris, you may want to weigh on this as well. The next steps we go through to get to the final cost of this project that we present, you know, to the village, and we boil it down to what it costs everyone on their stormwater, you know, cost, you know, that they're paying. I mean, where does this fit into the next iteration of progress to the final cost of this project?
So that parallel to this, we're also working with another firm on the construction side to kind of true up and verify the engineering estimates for the entire vision. And that's probably a month to 6 weeks worth of work. So that would be brought back to the council in like the September, October timeframe for starting those discussions. And that would run parallel to this project, moving the engineering forward for this piece. And the reason that those kind of have to move in parallel is because we can't move anywhere with this project until we start to do some additional engineering and water quality monitoring. We kind of push this whole thing as far as we can. And we're not going to be able to provide, regardless of decisions on how much of the rest of the project gets built or what timeline that gets built on. If this piece of the project doesn't go into the ground, there's really no way that we can provide meaningful stormwater relief to the west side of town.
You know, following up on Bob's question, it would be great if we could get a kind of a rough timeline of what the next steps are and the next, you know, sort of our next benchmarks in the process, just because it's been a long time since we've visited the project as a whole, the scope. So I don't know if that'd be possible to provide the council with that, but that would be super helpful.
Yeah, Penny, the next steps, as you know, we just got done with all the intergovernmental agreements where
Right.
each individual component was reviewed with the community in fair depth.
Right.
The last being March of this year before the pandemic hit and shut us down.
Right.
Next steps are our cost, our contractor or a contractor is working to provide market-based pricing, which will be a comparative document to Strand's estimate of probable cost. Unlike the tunnel where the project continued to rely strictly on engineers' estimates and there wasn't any street pricing, if you will, to verify these numbers. You know, the scope creep started to jump in and it ran the project up in a hurry. So this is a real checkpoint to go out to the market and get a sense of what a guy who would build it would charge for it and use it as a comparison. Once we hit that,
I don't want to cut you off. I just meant in terms of in our next packet, if we can get sort of a schematic, that's all I meant. I mean, I understand it in general, but just in terms so that we all have the same schematic that we're all working off of. That's all I meant.
Yep. Well, I think we can work something like that out.
Perfect. Great.
But Bob, just so you understand, tighten your seatbelt because the numbers and the financing discussion are something I'm anticipating pushing September, October into November before we get into budget. Obviously this 28 million changes the conversation in a lot of ways, but these are conversations that once we have the real numbers that I've been really pressing for from the beginning, we can then start our financing and costing discussions in earnest. So that'll be this fall.
Well, Chris, that's actually a shorter timeline than I anticipated here, which I think is great because it sort of feeds into the 2021 capital budgeting. So those numbers will start to coalesce around good engineering figures, which I think is important. And, I think ultimately what we all want to get to is, a total, as Penny's saying, a total holistic cost on this and what it boils down to, each of us, as residents of the town.
That's correct.
And how it feeds in, right? I mean, that's ultimately what it gets down to. And if that is something that we can, inform the public, later this fall, early winter, I think that's a great timeline, quite honestly.
Yeah, there's been a lot going on behind the scenes, Bob, and I haven't lost track of the importance of that conversation. But I wanted to make sure that we had at least some numbers that had some life to them. So it's going to be really interesting to see where this falls, and we've got some pretty interesting policy discussions to tackle too. Interestingly enough, if we would have had this conversation a year, it would have been absent of adding another $28 million worth of free money into the conversation. So things are starting to come together in a really good way, and I think we'll be able to give the public some realistic numbers. It won't be the exact numbers because obviously the project is actually bid. It's all just conversation, but and we won't be in a position to bid this project for, as you saw with Steve, probably the middle or the third quarter of next year. So, but we'll be able to get within the right ballpark, and I think that's really important at this point in time too, as a checkpoint.
Hey, Chris, can you say that one more time about the time frame of bidding the project? It broke up there.
Well, Steve thinks to think it's going to take Strand a lot longer than I do to finish those drawings and get them out for bid.
Okay.
I see Mike laughing. You keep laughing.
You heard that right, Mike?
The Rince timeline and the Saunders timeline.
I'm not worried about Strand. I'm worried about the Army Corps.
Yeah. Well, that's a construction item, and I'll be going to Washington on that soon. So that's another issue altogether. But anyway, it'll be I'm looking to have something that we can, Steve was mentioning that 2021, winter period, and I think that would be a real reasonable and workable time frame to shoot for. But we really won't know, and we really won't know till we push it out to the street and see what the market tells us.
Right.
So,
well, we have to approve this contract, to move forward to the next step.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hey, Chris, I know this may not be the place to talk about it, but and by the way, that's phenomenal news about the money from the state. And thanks to you, the team, and our representative. But this is Illinois, so I just am looking at risk as we are the board. We kind of look at what risk factors there are. Is there risk to that money? Is it put aside? Is it? I unless it's in my bank account or guaranteed, especially in some of the issues that we're having in the state. I guess I'm curious: how is this money put aside?
Sure, I can address that briefly. So a capital bill a distinct capital bill that's approved by the legislature and signed by the governor has identified revenue streams. As those revenue streams come online, they will issue bonds on that will support the debt service, and the bond proceeds will be distributed to the grant recipients. It will, like, as I mentioned early on, it'll be about a 2-year window or so. We're going to monitor it continually because it's important money to the village. But we've already registered with the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity. We're in good standing with the state, and it may start to come in sections as the revenues and the bonds proceeds are distributed.
Okay.
So, in my experience with capital bills, it may take a little bit, but the money is generally there once the revenue streams are supported and they can bond on it.
Okay. Thanks, Rob.
Yep.
You know, Rob, I think that the, you know, obviously we're going to have our municipal finance bankers as part of this, you know, conversation, and that might play into the type of bonds that are issued in terms of revenue streams.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. The timing of debt service, all that will come into play. We'll come up with some models to review with the council.
Other questions, comments, or?
Yeah, I'd go ahead. Again, great news about the 28 million, and thanks to the reps and village staff for working with all that. A couple of questions I have for either Steve or maybe Strand. As we go through this first phase of the Forest Reserve design project, I'm assuming you kind of have to go back and check the engineering to the north to make sure we're at the right elevation crossing Willow Road. I'm assuming that's all kind of part of this project and it'll be determined so we don't miss it by a foot or two, right?
Yes.
I mean, I just thinking ahead. And then when we go for permitting for the Forest Reserve, how much is the Forest Reserve, Army Corps, and everybody else going to look for an engineering for properties for the projects to the north? Is our preliminary engineering of the north enough to support the proper engineering of this of the Forest Reserve project? Does that make sense?
Yeah, so that's a little bit of an open item for discussion, but the way that we're planning on approaching that based on what's in the memorandum of understanding is there is effort in this design contract for water quality data gathering now, and then modeling for what water quality could be anticipated based on the conceptual engineering that we have. And the idea would be that then when we advance that engineering upstream in the future, we would proof out what's in the water quality modeling. What Mike puts together under this will be conservative. One of the things that was that we spent some time on negotiating the MOU was not having this sort of broad concepts of what water quality is, but there's actually figures and numbers that we have to be able to hit. So we wanted to have that built into the MOU so that we didn't have a floating target, which I think is what you're concerned about, Trustee Swart. So the MOU requires that we capture and treat the first ½ inch of runoff from the upstream watershed that's tributary to the Forest Preserve project. And then it lists out the parameters that we have to monitor and test for based on what the current water quality is, and then being able to improve from that. So it's a fairly known target. It's not entirely kind of locked in, but it's a fairly known target that we're shooting for. And we designed it that way so we didn't have to do a bunch of detailed engineering on the upstream projects just to be able to get the permit for the Forest Reserve.
Yeah, other than the water quality, I guess I was more concerned with, we go ahead and permit and build the Forest Reserve project. And if for some reason we never do Duke Childs or any other upstream stuff, that's not going to be possible. I'm taking it. You know, the Forest Reserve is not going to like that if we don't continue the projects to the north. How is that tied in?
That's true. So that there is the expectation built into the MOU that this is a program that's going to be built. And I think based on our experience with the Forest Preserve staff and also with Commissioner Sufferton there's a fair amount of understanding that these things don't happen immediately. So they're not expecting everything to be built at one time. We've always communicated that this is phased in. They don't want it phased over 50 years, okay? But
Right.
but they also don't expect that we're going to start construction on all the rest of the phases the minute that we close out the contract on the Forest Reserve.
And upon completion of the Forest Reserve project, will that still give us some relief in the interim of building the upper north pieces? Will there still
Absolutely.
be some relief because of that?
Absolutely. We'll have 100 acre feet of storage. We won't have the conveyance in place to get all the water there as fast as it will ultimately need to get there. It takes the tailwater off the existing storm sewer system and improves the capacity of that. So we'll start to see some relief right away.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Anybody else? I can't see everybody, so don't just hop in if you got something to say. Okay. Great. Well, thank you, everybody. We will go forward and I'll ask for, oh wait, I'm sorry. Kristen, is there anybody out there in the internet who would like to speak on this subject?
We did have one individual join the room since the discussion started, so I'm going to unmute. Welcome to the meeting, S. Lapisier. Hello, would you like to make a comment? Hearing none, there are no other comments.
Okay. Well, thank you. We'll go forward then, and I will ask for a motion to adopt resolution number R51 2020.
So moved.
Second?
Second, okay, whatever.
Roll call vote, Rob?
Sure. Trustee Kripe,
Yes.
trustee Lampier,
Yes.
trustee Swerk,
Yes.
trustee Apatow,
Yes.
trustee Coladarchi,
Yes.
trustee Dearborn.
Yes.
All right, that motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job, and we're moving forward. It's good to hear. Okay, old business, there is none. Item 10, new business, A, resolution number R47 2020, amendment to development agreement and restrictive covenants, 630 Pine Lane. At the request of the applicant, this meeting will be deferred to the August 18th council meeting. Do we have to take any formal action, Peter, to extend the, no?
No, it was at the applicant's request, so you can just defer it.
Okay, that's great. Well then, item 11, appointments. I have none this evening. Closed session, there is none. And adjournment. One thing I do want to say, folks, if you really need a reliable connection, Verizon has been awesome. So dump that Comcast or that AT&T. This is, ever since I signed on to my iPad, it's been as stable as can be. So thumbs up to Verizon. We need. All right. Well, with that said, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Trustee Dearborn,
Yes.
trustee Kripe,
Yes.
trustee Swerk,
Yes.
trustee Coladarchi,
Yes.
trustee Lampier,
Yes.
trustee Apatow.
I heard them all. That motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you,
All right,
council.
guys. We'll see you next week. And we'll
Good night, everyone.
be having some interesting conversations. Have a good one.
Good job, Chris.